Hey, this is Beth Kruger of Wonderful Vintage. Thanks so much for following along with me here on YouTube.
Okay, I might be a little crazy, but I've challenged myself to post one video every day for the next 7 days. I am forcing myself to do this little YouTube challenge because I want to get more comfortable in front of the camera, and I really want to also find out what you want to see and what makes you interested in what I have to post. So this is part of my challenge to myself. I'm hoping to grow my subscribers here on YouTube as well as grow the quality of my content on my channel. So that's sort of my two big main goals. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Beth Kruger. I am the owner and ingenue, I guess, behind Wonderful Vintage, which is my vintage reselling business. I really haven't been in business for that long. I kind of started reselling in April of this year. I have a vintage booth, an actual like physical in-person booth. It's very tiny. It's more like a cubby than a booth actually. And it's up in St. Albans, Vermont, which is where I'm located. Maybe you could tell. It's August and it was 50 degrees this morning in Vermont. And so I am dressed appropriately. So I'm ready for fall. But my vintage booth is in St. Albans, and it's in a place called ReMarket. And ReMarket is not just vintage, but the idea is like repurposing and reusing products, home goods mostly, but things so that they stay out of a landfill. That's really the idea. And everybody in the shop loves vintage, and so most of our product is vintage. But some of the stuff about ReMarket is actually from sellers that make things. So they take like old t-shirts or old like flannels and like sew them and restyle them so that they can have a new life experience. So there's a lot of cool stuff up in that shop. So anyway, me as a vintage reseller, I have loved vintage my entire life. I kind of started shopping secondhand when I was in high school and college. I bought like all of my clothes in college secondhand. Sorry, my cats are a little crazy right now. I bought all these clothes in college secondhand because like I loved boho, hippie style, and everything that I really loved in like the 90s, mid 90s or so. There wasn't like a lot of that like hippie style. I really loved like 70s clothing. And so I went to like my local thrift shop and I bought like really cool bell-bottom jeans, or I sewed my own clothes in that aesthetic that I was looking for. So that kind of started me on the vintage journey, I guess. When we were in college, also, we had like no money. So we bought all of our furniture like from a recycling store, which was, back then was like Restore or Recycle. We still have the stores today in this area. I went to college in this Burlington, Vermont area, which is where I'm originally from. And then, after college and after sort of living that like thrift life of a college student trying to save money, I moved to New York City and I lived and worked there for about 12 years. Again, like when it came to styling my home and decorating my home in New York City, I went to vintage and antique stores, and the stores in Manhattan are amazing. So many of them are like out of reach, were out of reach for me financially, but like I really got to see some incredible antiques and vintage items down there. And that's like a whole other level than like what you might experience here in Vermont. So that really, that was the way I decorated my home. And every time I would come up to Vermont to visit my family, I would go shopping at the local vintage stores or local thrift stores up in Vermont and bring stuff with me down to New York City and decorate my home that way. So that was kind of my little history of my vintage lifestyle and my vintage home. What else? I worked for many years as in the health and wellness industry. So I have taught yoga for over 20 years. I started in 2003 was when I did my teacher training. So I have been teaching for over 20 years as a yoga teacher and specializing in teaching for pregnant women, actually pregnant and postpartum women for almost my entire career. So I was a birth educator, also a lactation counselor. So my years in the wellness industry were really focused on like women's health and kind of helping women and their partners through their labor experience, this transitional time of life from before having a child to after. And I loved that career. And sometimes I still miss that work. But when I hit 40, about like 8 years ago or so, I just felt like something was missing and I wanted something else and I wanted something additional, like another challenge. And I was starting to go through an experience like changes of what I would call like midlife. And so I started focusing more of my energy, more of my effort on women's perimenopausal health and wellness. So that led me into like this over 40 female demographic. And so I've also worked as a wellness coach and practitioner for women over 40, like everything from perimenopause to menopause and beyond. And I find it very fulfilling. I also started traveling a lot about 8 years ago or so, like maybe late 30s, early 40s. With my wellness business, I offered retreats and travel experiences for my clientele all over the world, really. And so sorry, my cat. So I started doing international retreats in like 2017. So it's been about 8 years of doing that kind of work. And I still offer retreat consulting services as part of like all of my offerings that I offer to folks. So this vintage reselling thing just sort of like has been birthed from my personal life more than actually my business and career life. But I've not really told very many people this. And so this is like the first time I'm actually saying it on video to anybody on YouTube. But I really would like to combine my love of travel with my love of vintage. And I hope to offer vintage sourcing tours and shopping experiences all over the globe, like thinking like, flea markets in France and, and markets in Italy and like Christmas markets in Germany or Austria. I mean, like I have a vision, I have like a bold plan, and I have no idea if it's like possible immediately. Actually, I know it's not possible immediately, although I do have a lot of connections in the travel industry. I'm not sure that like I have the audience, like definitely don't have enough people following along on my journey to be able to make travel experiences that are connected to thrifting and vintage finds and old world treasures happen right now. But it's really something I'd love to do. So you're the first to know, despite, except for like maybe a couple of my friends that I've actually shared this information with. So if you're watching this video, like my secret now, it's out. Yeah, so that's like my big goal. That's my big plan. As a woman myself, entering or in my midlife, like entering 50, I'm approaching my 50s in a couple of years. So that would be like my big one of my big growth goals for my 50th decade of life. So anyway, that's it. That's all I'm going to share for now. I would love it if you would like follow along on my journey and let me know what kinds of videos that you would like to see from someone like me. I have a whole lineup of different things all week. So I'm going to show you like some of my classic like haul videos. I have some DIY and creation videos, and I have like a little cleaning tutorial that I am also going to share with you. I love to travel. I actually have a little trip coming up this weekend, so I'm going to film a bunch of footage on my trip and then probably share that with you next week. That might not get into this challenge, but I have a lot of fun stuff coming up. So follow along if that is of any interest to you. And yeah, I really appreciate your support, and thanks for tuning in and being part of my world. I've already found the community here on YouTube to be like just so supportive and sweet. All of the resellers that I am meeting, or the vintage lovers that I'm meeting here on YouTube, are really, really darling and supportive and just like cheering each other on. I really wanted to connect on a platform that wasn't just about like likes and follows and like showed this like kind of fake version of life. Like, this feels a lot more real and more authentic to me. And so I'm really enjoying being here and connecting with all of you. So give me a follow along, right? Like, subscribe if you want to see the rest of my 7-day journey. And thank you again so much for supporting me. And I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.